In 1927, a man named John Jefferson Green walked up to one of the directors of the Southland Ice Company in Dallas, Texas, and proposed something unusual. The ice business was simple. Southland operated a network of ice houses, facilities that produced and sold block ice to households that didn't yet have electric refrigerators. Green's idea was to add something to it. What if the ice house also sold milk, bread, and eggs? Products that people needed every day. Why make two trips when one would do? The director Green approached was Joe Thompson. Thompson thought it was a good idea. Within a few years, Southland had expanded into what we would now recognize as a convenience store. In 1928, the stores were branded Tote'm Stores. In 1946, after Southland extended its hours to 7 in the morning through 11 at night, it renamed the chain 7-Eleven. The name described exactly what made it different. It was open when other stores were not. For the next 3 decades, 7-Eleven grew because Americans needed what it offered. The suburbs were expanding, people were driving. They needed gas, a coffee, a quick snack, something to pick up on the way home. The convenience store format was perfectly suited to the rhythm of post-war American life. By 1965, 7-Eleven was the 49th largest merchandising firm in the United States. The Slurpee launched that same year. By 1969, the chain had grown to 3,537 locations. Through the 1970s and into the early 1980s, 7-Eleven continued expanding, becoming the convenience store by which all others were measured. Then, in 1987, Southland Corporation completed a leveraged buyout worth approximately $4 billion. Like every LBO, this one loaded the company with debt that had to be serviced from operating cash flow. By 1990, Southland Corporation filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. The chain that had invented the modern convenience store, that had operated for 63 years, was insolvent. What saved it was Japan. Ito-Yokado was a Japanese retail conglomerate that had been operating 7-Eleven locations in Japan under a franchise agreement since 1973. The Japanese 7-Eleven had actually become more successful than the American original. 7-Eleven Japan was one of the most efficiently run convenience store networks in the world. In 1991, Ito-Yokado acquired a 70% stake in Southland, injecting $430 million in cash and pulling the company out of bankruptcy. In 2005, Ito-Yokado reorganized into 7&I Holdings, which became the parent company of 7-Eleven globally. The convenience store born in Dallas in 1927, gone bankrupt in 1990, rescued by Tokyo in 1991, was now a Japanese corporate asset. For a long time, the Japanese ownership didn't matter much to the consumer. You walked in, got your Slurpee, paid for your gas, grabbed a hot dog from the roller grill, and left. The 7-Eleven experience was consistent, and that consistency, even if not always remarkable, was what customers expected. But while 7-Eleven was managing its corporate structure, the American convenience store market was changing in ways that would become an existential challenge. Wawa, the Pennsylvania-based chain, had quietly built something different. Fresh hoagies, good coffee, made-to-order sandwiches, clean stores with modern layouts. The Wawa experience was meaningfully better than the average 7-Eleven. Sheetz did the same thing in the different markets. Casey's General Stores built a reputation for fresh pizza that made it a destination. Buc-ee's in the South created enormous locations with extensive fresh food programs and a retail experience so distinctive that people drove significant distances to visit. What all of these competitors had figured out was that the gas station stop was changing. Gasoline volume was declining as fuel efficiency improved and electric vehicles began to appear. The transaction that had historically brought people to a convenience store, fill up the tank, grab something while you're there, was becoming less frequent. If you could no longer count on the fuel customer, you needed a different reason for people to visit. The answer was food, fresh quality made-to-order food, the kind of food that made a convenience store a destination rather than just a convenience. 7-Eleven understood this. It launched its Evolution Store concept, larger format locations with better food programs and fresh coffee. It invested in transformation. In 2021, it acquired Speedway from Marathon Petroleum for $21 billion, significantly expanding its North American footprint and increasing its debt load considerably. The Speedway acquisition was the same logic that has preceded many retail disasters: scale as a response to competitive pressure. The theory that more locations creates advantages that fix underlying business problems. The problem was that Speedway did not fix the underlying problem. The average 7-Eleven store, particularly in smaller markets and aging strip mall locations, could not compete with the food quality and atmosphere of regional competitors who had spent decades building a different kind of convenience retail. More 7-Eleven locations does not create better 7-Eleven locations, and by 2024, the financial results were making that clear. In 2024, 7 & I Holdings closed 444 7-Eleven locations across North America, citing inflation, weaker traffic, and shifting consumer behavior. The closures represented approximately 3% of its North American store base. In 2025, more closures followed. Over 600 locations combined across 2024 and 2025 were shuttered. Then, in April 2026, 7 & I disclosed that it planned to close 645 locations in North America in fiscal year 2026. Not all of those locations would disappear entirely. Some would be converted to wholesale fuel stores, which sell gasoline without a full convenience retail operation attached. But the net loss of locations in North America would be roughly 440 stores. 7 & I also disclosed that it expects its revenue to fall 9.4% for the current fiscal year, a significant decline for one of the world's largest retail operators. The company has not released a full list of which specific stores are closing. Customers in many communities will not know their local 7-Eleven is affected until they drive past and see the lights off. The reason 7 & I gives for these closures is not distress. It is transformation. The stores that close are mostly the smaller, underperforming locations that cannot be economically upgraded to the food-focused Evolution Store format. The stores that stay, and the 205 new stores it plans to open in fiscal 2026, will be larger, better-equipped food-forward locations designed to compete with Wawa and Sheetz on their own terms. Whether that transformation can be completed before the competitive dynamics of the American convenience store market further erode 7-Eleven's position is the central question of the next 5 years. 7 & I Holdings is targeting a 2027 IPO for its North American operations. The theory is that a standalone publicly traded North American 7-Eleven, having shed underperforming locations, investing in food and fresh product categories, can command a valuation that reflects a growth story rather than a turnaround. Whether Wall Street will agree depends on whether the transformation is complete enough by 2027 to tell that story credibly. Investors who have watched 7-Eleven lose ground to Wawa, Sheetz, and Casey's for a decade are not going to pay a premium valuation for a chain that is still catching up to its regional competitors. The story of 7-Eleven is almost 100 years old. It started with a man who thought people would appreciate buying milk and bread in the same place they bought ice. He was right. The format he helped create became the backbone of American convenience retail. It spread from Dallas to every corner of North America. It went bankrupt in 1990 and came back. It was acquired by Japan and came back stronger. It expanded to 84,000 stores worldwide. It invented the Slurpee. It made the Big Gulp a cultural reference. For close to a century, if you needed something quickly and the regular stores were closed, 7-Eleven was the answer. Now, after more than 600 closures in 2024 and 2025, with 645 more planned in fiscal 2026, with revenue falling nearly 10%, with the American convenience store market being restructured by competitors who figured out food before 7-Eleven did. The question is what the next chapter looks like. The company has a plan: evolution stores, fresh food, better coffee, the IPO in 2027, the closure of underperformers, the opening of better format replacements, the theory that you can lose 400 net locations in a year and call it progress because the ones that remain are better. Maybe that theory is correct. Wawa has proven that a convenience store with genuinely good food can build fierce loyalty. If 7-Eleven can achieve at scale what Wawa has achieved regionally, the story has a good ending. But the execution risk is enormous. And the competitive environment will not wait while 7-Eleven transforms. Wawa is expanding, Sheetz is expanding, Casey's is expanding. The regional convenience chains that built better food programs while 7-Eleven was focused on acquisitions are now growing into 7-Eleven's territory. The convenience store that was born out of an ice house in Dallas that went bankrupt and came back, that was saved by Japan and grew to a global empire, is now asking whether it can reinvent itself one more time before the window closes. Subscribe before the next video, because the story always looks simpler from the outside than it is on the inside.